The morning sun cast long shadows through the alien trees as Barron Trump checked his equipment one more time. At 83 years old, his hands still moved with the practiced ease of someone who had spent decades studying life on distant worlds. His white hair caught the strange orange light of Kepler 442c's star, and his weathered face showed the marks of a lifetime spent under foreign skies. "Ready for another day of discovery, old man?" Dr. Lisa Martinez called out from across their small camp. At 45, she was young enough to be his granddaughter, but her respect for him was genuine. She had read all his books about alien life forms during her college years. "As ready as anyone can be on a world we know nothing about," Barron replied, adjusting the strap of his sample collection bag. "That's what makes it exciting." Captain Jake Morrison emerged from his tent, already dressed in his protective gear. The former soldier-turned-expedition leader had the kind of alert, eyes that missed nothing. "Weather reports look good for the next 6 hours. No storms predicted. We should be able to reach the northern meadow by midday." Their small research team had been on Kepler 442c for 3 days now. The planet was beautiful in ways that Earth had forgotten. Massive trees stretched toward the sky like natural skyscrapers, their leaves shimmering with colors that had no names in human language. The air smelled of honey and rain, even though no clouds were visible. The Galactic Federation had marked this world as potentially suitable for human settlement. That meant Barron's job was to catalog every living thing they could find and determine if any of them showed signs of intelligence. It was important work. Mistakes could cost lives, or worse, entire civilizations. "The soil samples from yesterday show high mineral content," Lisa said, loading her equipment into her backpack. "Whatever lives here should be well nourished." "I've seen tracks near the water source," Jake added. "Large ones, probably some kind of herbivore, but we should stay alert." Barron nodded. After 50 years of studying alien life, he had learned to respect every new world. Earth's animals were predictable. Alien creatures could surprise you in ways that could kill you. They broke camp quickly and efficiently. The forest around them was waking up. Strange bird-like creatures called to each other from the treetops. Small rabbit-like animals with 6 legs bounded between the undergrowth. Everything seemed peaceful and natural. The walk to the northern meadow took them through terrain that changed every few hundred meters. Dense forest gave way to rocky hills, which then opened into grassy clearings. Each area had its own collection of creatures, and Barron carefully noted each one in his electronic journal. "Look at this," Lisa said, kneeling beside a cluster of flowers that glowed softly in the shade. "They're producing their own light, bioluminescence, but during the day. Probably to attract pollinators that are active now," Barron observed. "See those flying insects? They seem drawn to the glow." Jake kept watch while the 2 scientists worked. His job was to keep them safe so they could focus on their research. He had done this dozens of times on other worlds, and he knew that danger could come from anywhere. By noon, they reached the meadow. It was even more beautiful than their satellite images had suggested. Grass that looked almost like Earth's wheat swayed in the gentle breeze. Flowers of every color dotted the landscape. A small stream wound through the middle of the open space, its water crystal clear. "This is perfect," Lisa said, setting down her equipment. "We can set up camp here for the night and do detailed studies of the area." "Agreed," Barron said. "This meadow probably supports more life than anywhere else we've seen." Jake surveyed the area with his trained eye. The meadow was surrounded by forest on 3 sides, with the 4th side opening to more grassland. There were multiple escape routes if needed, and good sight lines in all directions. "Looks safe enough. I'll set up our perimeter sensors." They spent the afternoon working. Lisa collected plant samples and studied the soil. Barron focused on the small animals that lived in and around the stream. Jake set up their camp and monitoring equipment. As evening approached, they gathered around their small cooking fire. The meal was standard expedition food, but the alien sunset made everything feel special. 2 moons were rising in the purple sky, and the first stars were becoming visible. "Tomorrow we should explore the forest edge," Barron suggested. "I keep seeing movement in there. Larger animals, I think." "As long as they're not dangerous," Lisa said. Some of those tracks Jake found were pretty big. Most herbivores aren't aggressive unless they're protecting young, Barron replied. And we haven't seen any signs of breeding grounds. Jake was less optimistic. On Earth, maybe, but we're not on Earth. I've seen too many supposedly harmless alien creatures turn deadly without warning. They talked for another hour about their findings and plans for the next day. The alien world grew quiet around them as its creatures settled into their nighttime routines. Different sounds replaced the daytime calls. Deeper, more mysterious, sounds that seemed to come from the forest. I'm going to do one more equipment check, Jake said, standing up from the fire. Then we should all get some sleep. Barron was cleaning his sample containers when he heard it. A sound like nothing he had ever encountered in 50 years of xenobiology. It was part roar, part rumble, and completely filled with rage. What was that? Lisa whispered. Before anyone could answer, the forest exploded. A creature burst through the tree line at the edge of their meadow. It was massive, easily 3 times larger than any bear on Earth. Its fur seemed to shift colors in the firelight, going from deep brown to silver to black. Its eyes reflected their fire like mirrors, but there was something in those eyes that made Barron's blood run cold. Intelligence and fury. The creature fixed its gaze on Barron and charged. "Run!" Jake shouted, reaching for his weapon. But there was nowhere to run. The creature moved with impossible speed for something so large. Lisa screamed. Jake fired his stunner, but the energy bolt seemed to have no effect. The creature stopped just meters from Barron rearing up on its hind legs. It was enormous, towering over all of them. Its claws were longer than human hands. Its teeth could crush bone. But it wasn't attacking. It was staring, directly at Barron. In that moment, Barron realized something that chilled him more than the creature's size or strength. This wasn't random. This wasn't territorial behavior or defense of young. This creature knew him. The creature stood on its back legs for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Its massive form blocked out the stars behind it. Barron could smell its wild scent, like wet earth and old forests. Every muscle in his body told him to run, but his mind told him something different. This was not a mindless animal. "Nobody move," Jake whispered, his stunner still aimed at the creature. "Barron, step back slowly." But Barron couldn't move. The creature's eyes held his attention, completely. They were not the simple eyes of a beast. There was thought behind them. There was purpose. The creature dropped back to all 4 legs and made a sound that was almost like speech. It was deep and rumbling, with clicks and growls mixed in. Then it did something that made Lisa gasp. It pointed at Barron. Not with a paw or claw, but with one long finger that extended from what looked like a hand hidden in its fur. The gesture was unmistakably human-like and unmistakably directed at Barron personally. "It's trying to communicate," Lisa said quietly. "Jake, lower your weapon. I don't think it wants to hurt us." "Are you crazy? Look at the size of that thing." The creature made the rumbling sound again, louder this time. Then it began to circle their camp, but it never took its eyes off Barron. It moved like it was looking for something or waiting for something. "We need to get to the emergency shelter," Jake said. "Now." Their emergency shelter was a small dome-shaped structure designed to protect them from dangerous weather or hostile creatures. It was only meant for short-term use, but it was better than being exposed. "Move slowly," Barron said. "Don't make any sudden movements." They began backing toward the shelter. The creature watched, but didn't try to stop them. When they reached the shelter's entrance, Jake pushed the others inside first, then followed, sealing the door behind them. The shelter was cramped with 3 people inside. Emergency lights cast everything in a pale blue glow. Outside, they could hear the creature moving around, sniffing at their equipment. "What do we do now?" Lisa asked. "We wait," Jake replied. "The shelter can hold for days if necessary. Eventually, it will lose interest and leave." But Barron shook his head. "It won't leave. It came here for a specific reason." "What reason? We've never been to this planet before. How could it know us?" Before Barron could answer, something strange happened. Lisa suddenly grabbed her head and cried out in pain. "Lisa, what's wrong?" Jake reached for her. "My head. Something's in my head," she gasped. Lisa had been genetically modified as a child to enhance her scientific abilities. One of those modifications was increased sensitivity to electromagnetic fields, which helped her study alien ecosystems. But now that sensitivity was causing her agony. Images began flashing through her mind. Not her own thoughts, but something else, something alien. It's trying to talk to me," she said through gritted teeth. "What do you mean?" "Telepathy. The creature is telepathic. It's sending me images." The pain in her head grew worse, but Lisa forced herself to concentrate on what she was receiving. The images were confusing at first, flashes of color and emotion without clear meaning, but slowly patterns began to emerge. "I can see a name. Grothak. Its name is Grothak." Outside the shelter, the creature made another rumbling sound, as if responding to hearing its name. "Grothak the Rememberer," Lisa continued, her voice strained. "That's its full name. It remembers things. Many things. Things from long ago." More images flooded her mind. She saw vast forests filled with creatures like Grothak. She saw them living in harmony with their world, sharing thoughts and memories across great distances. She saw them as they truly were, not animals but a civilization. "They're not just intelligent," Lisa said. "They're ancient. Their species has been around for thousands of years. They store memories collectively. Each individual carries the history of their people." "That's impossible," Jake said. "Our surveys showed no signs of civilization on this planet." "That's because they don't build cities or use technology like we do. They live as part of the natural world. But they're still intelligent. Still people." The telepathic connection grew stronger. Lisa could feel Grothak's emotions now, and they were overwhelming. Anger, yes, but also sadness. Deep, terrible sadness. "He's angry at Barron," she said. "But not because of anything that's happened. Because of something that will happen." "What do you mean?" Barron asked. Lisa's face went pale as the next set of images hit her. "He can see the future. Not clearly, but in fragments, and in every future he sees, you destroy his people." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "That's impossible," Barron said. "I would never harm an intelligent species." "But you will," Lisa continued, her voice barely a whisper. "He's seen it over and over. You write a report that says his people are just animals, not intelligent, not worthy of protection." More images flooded through. Lisa saw human ships arriving at this world. She saw massive mining equipment tearing apart the forests. She saw Grothak's people running in terror as their homes were destroyed. "The mining companies," she gasped. "They want this planet for its minerals, but they need a scientific report first. A report that says there's no intelligent life here. And I write that report," Barron said quietly. "In every future Grothak has seen, yes. You classify his people as non-sapient wildlife. You say they're just unusually large animals with some social behaviors. That gives the mining companies legal permission to strip the planet." Jake looked between them. "But that can't be right. Barron would never make such a mistake." "Wouldn't I?" Barron asked. His voice was heavy with a growing horror. "Look at what I almost did tonight. I saw intelligence in that creature's eyes. And my first thought was still that it was just an animal. A smart animal, but still an animal." Lisa cried out as another wave of images hit her. These were more personal, more specific. "He's showing me your future report," she said. "You describe their telepathy as instinctual pack communication. You say their complex social behaviors are just advanced herd dynamics. You compare them to earth whales or dolphins. Intelligent for animals, but not truly sapient." "Stop," Barron said. "Please, no more." But the images kept coming. Lisa saw Barron sitting at his desk, writing the very words that would doom an entire species. She saw him convinced that he was being objective and scientific. She saw him blind to his own human prejudices about what intelligence should look like. "He's also showing me why he attacked you," she continued. In some of the timelines he's seen, killing you prevents the report from being written. Someone else takes over the survey. Someone who recognizes his people's intelligence. So he's trying to save his species by murdering me, Barron said. He's desperate. In his visions, billions of his people die because of your report. Wouldn't you do anything to prevent that? Outside the shelter, Grothak made another sound. This one was different. Sadder. Lisa felt a wave of grief wash over her through the telepathic connection. He doesn't want to kill you, she said. He likes humans. He thinks we have potential. But he's seen too many futures where we destroy everything we don't understand. Then we have to change the future, Barron said firmly. We have to make sure I write a different report. He doesn't think you can, Lisa replied. He's seen you try in some timelines, but your human nature always wins. You always see his people as animals in the end. The shelter fell silent except for the sound of their breathing and Lisa's occasional gasps as more telepathic images reached her. Outside, Grothak waited. A creature caught between his desire to save his people and his hope that humanity might be better than his visions suggested. Inside, 3 humans struggled with the knowledge that their good intentions might not be enough to prevent a tragedy of galactic proportions. The night passed slowly. Lisa drifted in and out of sleep, her mind still connected to Grothak's telepathic signals. Each time she dozed, more images came to her. Different versions of the same terrible future, played out over and over again. When morning came, Grothak was gone. The 3 humans emerged from their shelter to find their camp undisturbed except for large paw prints around the perimeter. Their equipment was untouched, but there was a strange feeling in the air, like the moment before a thunderstorm. We need to get back to the research station, Jake said. We need better equipment to understand what we're dealing with. Barron nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. All night he had been thinking about the futures Grothak had shown Lisa. Could he really be capable of such a terrible mistake? He had spent his entire career protecting alien life forms. The idea that he would doom an entire species seemed impossible, but the doubt was there, growing like a cancer in his thoughts. The journey back to their base took most of the morning. Their research station was a collection of prefabricated buildings, connected by covered walkways. It had everything they needed for detailed scientific analysis, including quantum computers capable of processing vast amounts of data. I want to run a full planetary scan, Barron said as soon as they arrived. If Grothak's people are as widespread as Lisa's vision suggested, our satellites should be able to detect them. Lisa was still feeling the effects of her telepathic contact. Her head ached, and strange images kept flashing through her mind, but she was determined to help. I'll analyze the electromagnetic readings from the meadow area. If they're telepathic, there should be energy signatures we can measure. Jake took charge of security. I'm setting up a perimeter defense system. If that creature comes back, I want to be ready. They worked through the day, each focused on their part of the puzzle. But as their data accumulated, they began to discover something even stranger than telepathic aliens. These readings don't make sense, Lisa said, staring at her computer screen. The electromagnetic patterns around the meadow are completely abnormal. It's like space-time itself is bent in that area. Barron looked up from his own analysis. Bent how? I'm not sure. But according to these measurements, time moves differently there. Not by much, maybe a few microseconds per hour, but it's measurable. Jake paused in his security preparations. Are you saying that meadow is some kind of time warp? Something like that. And it's not natural. These patterns suggest the entire planet is sitting inside some kind of temporal field. Barron felt a chill run down his spine. That would explain how Grothak can see the future. If time flows differently here, if past and future are more fluid, then precognitive abilities would be enhanced. But that's not the worst part, Lisa continued. I've been analyzing the satellite data from the past 3 days. The temporal distortions are getting stronger. Whatever is causing this effect, it's increasing. They spent the next few hours piecing together the implications. The planet wasn't just home to telepathic aliens. It was a temporal anomaly, a place where the normal rules of cause and effect were weakened. This explains everything, Barron said finally. Grothak hasn't just seen one possible future. He's experienced multiple timeline variations. To him, these aren't possibilities, they're memories. But if time is unstable here, Jake asked, how do we know which future is the real one? Maybe they all are, Lisa replied quietly. Maybe that's why he's so desperate. In his perception, he's already watched his people die 100 different ways. As evening approached, they made a disturbing discovery. Lisa's analysis of corporate databases had revealed something that made their situation much more urgent. The Terran Mining Consortium has already filed preliminary claims on this planet, she announced. They're waiting for our scientific survey before beginning operations. How long do we have? Barron asked. 6 months. The mining ships are already being prepared. As soon as you submit your report classifying the planet's life forms, they'll begin the extraction process. Jake pulled up the mining plans on his computer. What he saw made him curse. They're planning to strip mine the entire northern continent. That's where most of the forests are. If Grothak's people live in those forests, they'll all die, Barron finished. Every last one of them. The weight of responsibility settled on Barron's shoulders like a physical burden. In 6 months, he would submit a report that would determine the fate of an entire species. If he classified the Ursans as intelligent, the mining operation would be canceled. If he didn't, billions of sapient beings would perish. It should be simple, he said aloud. I know they're intelligent now. I'll just write the truth in my report. But Lisa shook her head. It's not that easy. Remember what Grothak showed me? He's seen timelines where you try to save his people. But something always goes wrong. What could go wrong? I have proof of their intelligence. Do you? What proof do we actually have? Telepathy? Lots of animals have limited telepathic abilities. Complex social behavior? So do ants and bees. Even, the fact that Grothak recognized the danger and tried to warn us could be explained as advanced survival instinct. Barron stared at her. You can't be serious. I'm not saying they're not intelligent. I'm saying that from a purely scientific standpoint, our evidence is circumstantial. Any corporate lawyer could argue that we're anthropomorphizing animal behaviors. Jake leaned back in his chair. So what you're saying is that even knowing the truth, we might not be able to prove it. Exactly. And that's probably what happens in the timelines where Barron tries to save them. He writes a report claiming they're intelligent, but the evidence isn't strong enough. The mining consortium challenges it in court, wins, and the operation proceeds anyway. Barron felt sick. So no matter what I do, they die? Not necessarily, Lisa said. But we need more than just telepathic visions. We need concrete, undeniable proof of their intelligence. The kind of proof that no court could dismiss. What kind of proof? Language, art, technology, some form of culture that's clearly sapient in origin. But Grothak's people don't use technology. They live as part of nature. Then we need to find their version of culture. Every intelligent species creates something that expresses their inner life. We just need to figure out what form it takes for them. As if summoned by their conversation, the perimeter alarms began to sound. Jake jumped to his feet and checked his monitors. Multiple contacts approaching from the forest. Large ones. Through the station's windows, they could see shapes moving between the trees. Dozens of them. All similar to Grothak, but each unique in size and coloring. They're coming, Lisa whispered. Barron stood up, his decision made. Then we meet them. If I'm going to write a report that will determine their fate, I need to understand who they really are. Are you insane? Jake protested. There are dozens of them out there, and they're all intelligent beings with the right to exist, Barron replied firmly. If I'm going to make a decision about their future, I'm going to make it with full knowledge of who they are and what they represent. He walked toward the station's main door. Where are you going? Lisa called. To meet my judges, Barron said, and to discover what it truly means to be human in the face of beings who are so fundamentally different from us that we almost missed their intelligence entirely. Outside, Grothak and his people waited in the growing darkness. Each one carried the memories of possible futures. Each one knew that the next few hours might determine whether their species lived or died. And in the research station, 3 humans, prepared to confront the most important question in the galaxy. What gives any species the right to decide the fate of another? Barron stepped outside the research station into the cool night air. The Ursans had arranged themselves in a semicircle around the building, their massive forms barely visible in the darkness. Their eyes reflected the station's lights like dozens of stars fallen to Earth. Grothak stood at the center of the group. When he saw Barron, he made a deep rumbling sound that the others repeated. It was like a greeting, but also like a warning. "I know why you're here," Barron said, his voice carrying across the open space. "You want to know what I'm going to write in my report." Lisa and Jake had followed him outside despite Jake's protests about safety. Lisa's telepathic sensitivity was still active, and she could feel the collective thoughts of the assembled Ursans pressing against her mind. "They're sharing memories with each other," she whispered to Barron. "Each one is showing the others what they've seen of possible futures." More Ursans emerged from the forest. Some were smaller than Grothak, possibly younger. Others were enormous, ancient-looking creatures whose fur had turned silver with age. All of them focused their attention on Barron with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. "How many of you are there?" Barron asked. Grothak made a series of sounds that almost resembled human speech. Lisa translated as the telepathic meaning reached her. "He says there are millions of them across this world. They live in family groups scattered through all the forests. Each group maintains telepathic contact with the others. A planet-wide communication network," Jake observed. "That's definitely a sign of intelligence." But even as he said it, Barron could hear the doubts that would arise. Any lawyer could argue that ants also had planet-wide communication through chemical signals. Bees shared information across vast distances through dance. Communication alone wouldn't be enough to prove sapience in a courtroom. Grothak stepped closer to Barron. Up close, his intelligence was even more obvious. His eyes showed complex emotions. His movements were deliberate and purposeful. But Barron could already imagine himself sitting in his office 6 months from now, writing words that would doom this magnificent being. The vision came to him with horrible clarity. He saw himself describing Grothak as a large mammalian predator showing elevated social behaviors consistent with pack hunting strategies. He heard himself explaining away the telepathy as electromagnetic sensitivity used for coordination during foraging activities. "No," Barron said aloud. "I won't do that. I won't let my scientific training blind me to what's right in front of me." But even as he spoke the words, he felt the insidious voice of doubt in his mind. What if he was wrong? What if he was letting his emotions cloud his judgment? What if these creatures were just very smart animals, and he was projecting human characteristics onto them? Lisa suddenly cried out and fell to her knees. The telepathic contact had intensified, and she was receiving a flood of images from multiple Ursans at once. "They're showing me the timelines," she gasped. "The ones where you try to save them." Barron knelt beside her. "What do you see?" "You write the report. You classify them as intelligent. But the mining consortium fights it. They bring in their own scientists. They challenge every piece of evidence." The images flowed through Lisa's mind like a terrible movie. She saw corporate lawyers questioning Barron's conclusions. She saw other scientists arguing that telepathy was just a form of animal instinct. She saw judges who had never left Earth making decisions about alien life based on human definitions of intelligence. "They win," Lisa continued. "The corporations always win, because the evidence isn't clear enough, because the Ursans don't fit human expectations of what intelligent life should look like." "Then what happens?" Barron asked, though he dreaded the answer. "The mining begins. The Ursans try to resist, but they're not violent by nature. They flee, deeper into the forests. But there's nowhere to run. The machines follow them everywhere." More images flooded Lisa's mind. She saw ancient forests reduced to stumps. She saw Ursan families separated and scattered. She saw the last of their kind dying alone, their planet-wide telepathic network finally falling silent. "In some timelines, a few survive," she whispered. "Hidden in remote areas the miners never reach, but their civilization is broken. Their collective memory is lost. They become what the humans always said they were. Just animals. Barron stood up, his fists clenched. There has to be another way. Grothak approached him again. This time, the great Urson did something unexpected. He reached out with one massive paw and gently touched Barron's shoulder. The gesture was unmistakably compassionate. Through Lisa, Grothak's thoughts reached them. He says he understands your pain. He knows you don't want to harm his people, but he also knows the nature of your species. What does he mean? Humans judge intelligence by their own standards. You look for technology, for cities, for the things that humans create. But the Ursons chose a different path. They developed their minds instead of their tools. They built a civilization of thought and memory instead of metal and stone. Barron felt a growing horror as he began to understand. So, when I evaluate them using human scientific methods, you miss everything that makes them truly intelligent? Lisa finished. Your tests are designed for human-type intelligence. The Ursons fail not because they're not smart, but because they're smart in ways humans don't recognize. More Ursons had gathered. There were now over 100 of them surrounding the research station. Each one carried thousands of years of collective memory. Each one was connected to millions of others across the planet. Together, they formed a single vast mind that spanned continents. But to human science, they were just large animals with some interesting social behaviors. Show me, Barron said suddenly. If you're truly intelligent, if you have a real civilization, show me something I can document. Something undeniably sapient. Grothak tilted his great head, considering. Then he made a sound that the other Ursons echoed. They began to move, arranging themselves in complex patterns around the research station. What are they doing? Jake asked. Lisa was receiving stronger telepathic signals now. It's hard to describe. They're thinking together, creating something with their minds. The Ursons continued their strange dance, their movements precise and coordinated. As they moved, Lisa began to perceive something incredible through her telepathic connection. They're making art, she breathed. Not physical art, mental art. They're creating patterns of thought and memory that tell the story of their entire species. Can you record it? Can you document it somehow? I don't know. It's not like anything in our technology. It exists only in their shared consciousness. Barron watched the incredible display of coordinated intelligence around him. He was witnessing something that had never been seen by human eyes. A form of civilization so alien that his own species had completely failed to recognize it, and he knew with growing certainty that he would fail to prove it to the people who mattered. The corporate scientists would dismiss it as complex animal behavior. The courts would reject telepathic evidence as unverifiable. The mining operations would proceed because humans could only see intelligence that looked like their own. I'm going to fail, he said quietly. Even knowing the truth, even seeing this miracle with my own eyes, I'm going to fail to save them. Grothak seemed to sense his despair. The great Urson approached him one more time, and this time he did something that broke Barron's heart. He bowed his head in what was unmistakably forgiveness. Through Lisa, his thoughts came clearly. He says he doesn't blame you. He knows you will try your best. But he also knows that some failures are larger than any individual. Sometimes entire species fail to understand each other, no matter how good their intentions. As the night deepened, Barron stood surrounded by beings whose intelligence and wisdom far exceeded his own, knowing that his human limitations would soon lead to their destruction. And for the first time in his long career, he truly understood the terrible weight of playing judge over alien life. Barron spent the rest of the night sitting outside the research station, surrounded by the Ursons. They remained in their complex formations, continuing their mental art that he could witness but never truly understand. Lisa sat beside him, acting as a bridge between human and Urson consciousness. As dawn approached, something changed in Barron's thinking. The despair that had overwhelmed him began to transform into determination. I've been approaching this all wrong. he said suddenly. Lisa looked up from her meditative state. The telepathic connection had exhausted her, but she was still receiving fragments of Ursan thoughts. What do you mean? I've been thinking like a single human trying to solve an impossible problem. But that's not what humans do best. Barron stood up, his mind racing with new possibilities. Humans solve problems by working together, by changing systems when those systems don't work. Jake, who had been keeping watch from the station doorway, walked over to them. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that the problem isn't just my report. The problem is the entire system that allows one scientist to make life or death decisions about alien species. Barron began pacing, his excitement growing. The Ursans watched him with interest, and through Lisa, he could feel their cautious hope. What if we don't just change my report? What if we change how humanity evaluates alien intelligence entirely? How? Joint evaluation teams, humans working directly with the species being studied. If the Ursans are intelligent, they should have a voice in determining their own fate. Lisa's eyes widened as she understood the implications. You want to include Grothak in writing the report about his own people? Not just Grothak, representatives from his entire species. We make the evaluation process collaborative instead of one-sided. Jake frowned. The mining corporations will never accept that. They'll claim it's biased. Then we make it official. We propose new protocols to the Galactic Federation, new laws that require joint evaluation teams for all first contact situations. That could take years to implement, Lisa pointed out. The mining operation starts in 6 months. Then we stop the mining operation. We don't just challenge it legally, we make it impossible to proceed. Barron turned to face the assembled Ursans. Grothak stepped forward, his massive form imposing even in the morning light. Through Lisa, tell Grothak that I want to propose something that's never been tried before, a partnership between our species to create a new way of studying alien intelligence. Lisa relayed the message telepathically. Grothak's response came back immediately. He wants to know what kind of partnership. I want to develop new tests for intelligence, tests that aren't based on human assumptions, tests that can recognize forms of consciousness that are completely different from our own. As Lisa translated, more Ursans gathered around them. The telepathic network was spreading the conversation across the planet. Millions of Ursan minds were now focused on this single discussion. He says they've been waiting for this moment, Lisa reported. They've seen timelines where humans and Ursans work together, but those timelines always seemed impossible to reach. Maybe they're not impossible. Maybe they just require us to be better than we've ever been before. Barron spent the next hour outlining his proposal. Working with Lisa as a translator, he explained his vision to the Ursans. Instead of a single human scientist making judgments about alien intelligence, there would be joint committees. Human scientists would work directly with representatives from the species being studied. We'd develop new protocols, Barron explained. Ways to recognize intelligence that doesn't look like human intelligence. Ways to document forms of consciousness that exist outside our normal understanding. The Ursans responded enthusiastically to the idea. Through their telepathic network, they began sharing their own insights about intelligence and consciousness. Lisa struggled to translate concepts that had no human equivalent. They're showing me how they think about intelligence, she said. For them, it's not about individual achievement. It's about collective wisdom, the ability to share experiences and build knowledge across generations. That's exactly what we need to document, Barron said. Their form of intelligence is just as valid as ours, more valid in some ways. Jake had been listening to the discussion with growing concern. Even if you develop new protocols, how do you stop the mining operation that's already planned? We don't just report to the Terran Mining Consortium, we report to the Galactic Federation. We make this a test case for how humanity handles first contact with truly alien intelligence. And if the Federation sides with the corporations, then we make the case public. We show the entire galaxy what humanity is really like when we encounter something we don't understand. Barron contacted the research station's communication system and began sending messages across the galaxy. He reached out to colleagues on other worlds. He contacted officials in the Galactic Federation. He even sent messages to news organizations. "What are you doing?" Lisa asked. "I'm making this too big to ignore. If the Terran Mining Consortium wants to destroy the Ursans, they'll have to do it in front of the entire galaxy." His first call was to Dr. Sarah Williams, a xenobiologist on the Federation capital world. She had worked with Barron for decades and trusted his judgment. "Sarah, I need your help with something unprecedented," he said over the quantum communication link. "I'm proposing a fundamental change in how we evaluate alien intelligence." "What kind of change?" "Joint evaluation teams. Humans working directly with the species being studied. Equal partnership in determining sapience classifications." There was a long pause. "Barron, that would revolutionize xenobiology." "It needs to be revolutionized. Our current methods are hopelessly biased toward human-type intelligence. We're missing entire forms of consciousness because we don't know how to look for them." "Do you have a specific case that's driving this proposal?" "I do. And Sarah, what I've discovered here will change everything we think we know about intelligence." Over the next several hours, Barron made similar calls to dozens of colleagues. Some were skeptical, others were intrigued, but all of them agreed to review his proposal and the evidence he was gathering. Lisa worked with the Ursans to develop new forms of documentation. They created telepathic recordings that could be transmitted through the quantum communication network. They developed ways to measure and verify the complex mental connections that linked the Ursan collective consciousness. "This is incredible," Lisa said as she reviewed the data. "We're not just documenting their intelligence, we're proving that intelligence can exist in forms we never imagined." Jake focused on the legal and political aspects of the problem. He contacted officials in the Galactic Federation's Department of Interspecies Affairs. He filed formal challenges to the mining permits. He ensured that any attempt to proceed with the mining operation would face immediate legal obstacles. "The Federation is taking notice," he reported. "They're sending a formal investigation team to review our findings." "How long do we have?" Barron asked. 2 months before they arrive. If we can demonstrate the validity of our new protocols by then, we might be able to stop the mining operation permanently." As the day progressed, something remarkable happened. The Ursans began actively participating in the development of the new intelligence evaluation protocols. They offered insights about consciousness that no human had ever considered. They suggested tests that could identify intelligence based on cooperation, collective memory, and environmental harmony rather than tool use and individual achievement. "They're not just subjects of study anymore," Lisa observed. "They're colleagues." "That's exactly what they should be," Barron replied. "Equals in the process of understanding consciousness itself." Grothak approached Barron as the sun began to set. Through Lisa, he communicated a thought that made Barron's heart race. He says he can see new timelines opening up, timelines where this partnership succeeds, where humans and Ursans work together, not just to save his people, but to create a better way for all species to interact. "But there's still danger, isn't there?" Barron asked. "Yes. He sees other timelines too, ones where the old patterns reassert themselves, where fear and misunderstanding win in the end." Barron looked at the hundreds of Ursans gathered around their research station. Each one represented a form of intelligence that humanity had almost failed to recognize. Each one was a reminder of how much his species still had to learn. "Then we make sure the good timelines are the ones that come true," he said. "We prove that humans can be better than their worst instincts." As night fell, the 3 humans and the Ursan collective began the most important work of their lives. They were not just trying to save one species from extinction. They were trying to create a new model for how intelligent beings could understand and respect each other across the vast differences that separated them. The future of interspecies. Relations in the galaxy hung in the balance. 2 months had passed since that first night when Grothak had shown himself to the human researchers. The small research station had transformed into something unprecedented in galactic history. Human scientists worked side by side with Ursan minds, developing new ways to understand consciousness itself. The Galactic Federation investigation team had arrived 3 days ago. They were impressive in their own way. Scientists from 12 different worlds, each bringing their own perspective on intelligence and awareness. But they were also skeptical. The idea of including the studied species in their own evaluation was revolutionary and dangerous. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the team leader, was a centaurian with 4 arms and crystal blue skin. She had spent her career studying intelligence across the galaxy, and she was not easily impressed. "The protocols you've developed are interesting," she told Barron during their morning briefing, "but they lack the objectivity that scientific evaluation requires." "With respect, Dr. Vasquez, objectivity is exactly what we're questioning. How can we objectively evaluate a form of consciousness that's completely different from our own? By we, using established, proven methods that have worked for centuries. Proven methods that have failed to recognize the intelligence of an entire planet," Lisa interjected. She had become the primary liaison between humans and Ursans, and the telepathic connection had changed her in fundamental ways. She could now perceive thoughts and emotions that existed beyond the range of normal human consciousness. The morning's formal evaluation was scheduled to take place in the meadow, where they had first encountered Grothak. The Federation team had set up their equipment in a careful grid, preparing to conduct traditional intelligence tests on volunteer Ursans. Barron watched the preparations with growing anxiety. Despite all their work, despite the revolutionary protocols they had developed, everything still came down to this moment. If the Federation team concluded that the Ursans were not truly intelligent, the mining operation would proceed. "The tests they're planning are all wrong," Lisa said quietly. "They're testing for individual problem-solving, tool use, language recognition, all the things that matter to spacefaring civilizations. But not the things that matter to the Ursans," Barron agreed. Jake approached them, his expression grim. "I just received word from the mining consortium. They've moved up their timeline. If the Federation doesn't declare the planet protected by the end of today, the mining ships will begin their approach tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Barron felt his heart sink. "That's impossible. The Federation team needs at least a week to complete their evaluation. Unless they conclude there's nothing here worth protecting." In the meadow, the Federation scientists were setting up their final test. It was a complex puzzle box designed to measure problem-solving ability and tool use. Dr. Vasquez had explained that any truly intelligent species should be able to solve it within an hour. Grothak stood before the puzzle box, his massive form dwarfing the small device. The other Ursans had arranged themselves in their familiar semicircle, but this time they seemed different, more tense, more focused. "Begin when you're ready," Dr. Vasquez announced. Grothak looked at the puzzle box for a long moment. Then he looked at Barron. Through Lisa, his thoughts came clearly. "He says this test means nothing to his people. It measures the wrong kind of intelligence." "Tell him he has to try," Barron urged. "If he doesn't solve it, they'll declare his people non-sapient." "He understands. But he wants you to know that what happens next is not about the test." Before Barron could ask what that meant, Grothak did something that surprised everyone. Instead of trying to solve the puzzle box, he stepped away from it and began to make the deep rumbling sounds that served as Ursan speech. The other Ursans responded immediately. They began to move in the complex patterns that Barron had learned, represented their form of collective thought. But this time, the patterns were different, more intense, more focused. "What are they doing?" Dr. Vasquez demanded. Lisa gasped as the telepathic connection hit her with overwhelming force. They're opening their minds, completely. They're showing us everything." The meadow filled with an energy that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Every human present could feel something happening, even those without telepathic sensitivity. It was like standing next to a vast, invisible ocean of consciousness. "I can see it," one of the Federation scientists whispered. "I can actually see their thoughts." The Ursans were sharing their collective memory with everyone present, not just fragments or images, but the complete experience of what it meant to be part of their civilization. The humans found themselves experiencing thousands of years of Ursan history, feeling the connections that linked every member of their species across the planet. Dr. Vasquez stumbled backward, her forearms trembling. This is impossible. No, species can maintain this level of mental connection across such distances. They're not just individuals, Lisa explained, her voice filled with wonder. They're parts of a single, planet-wide consciousness. Each Ursan is like a neuron in a vast brain that spans continents. The telepathic sharing continued. The humans experienced the Ursan understanding of intelligence, which was based not on individual achievement but on collective wisdom. They felt the deep connections that allowed the Ursans to share knowledge, emotions, and experiences instantly across any distance. Their entire civilization exists in their shared consciousness, Barron realized. They don't need cities or technology, because they've built something far more advanced. They've created a truly unified species consciousness. But even as the wonder of the experience overwhelmed them, Barron noticed something alarming. The telepathic sharing was taking a terrible toll on the Ursans. Grothak was trembling with effort, and several of the smaller Ursans had collapsed. They're hurting themselves, he said urgently. Lisa, tell them to stop. They know, she replied, but they're willing to sacrifice themselves to prove their intelligence. This is the only way they can show us what they truly are. The magnitude of what the Ursans were doing hit Barron like a physical blow. They were literally opening their minds to potential destruction to save their species. They were making themselves completely vulnerable to beings who had the power to destroy them. And in that moment, Barron made his own choice about vulnerability. He walked directly into the center of the Ursan circle, placing himself at the heart of their telepathic storm. The mental energy was overwhelming, threatening to shatter his consciousness entirely. But he didn't resist. "What are you doing?" Jake shouted. "What they're doing," Barron replied. "Showing complete trust." He opened his mind completely to the Ursan telepathic network, not just allowing them to see his surface thoughts, but inviting them to examine his deepest fears, motivations, and desires. He let them see his genuine horror at the possibility of causing their extinction. He let them see his admiration for their civilization and his regret that humans had almost missed recognizing their intelligence. The experience was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Barron felt his individual consciousness dissolving into something vast and interconnected. For a brief moment, he was not just Barron Trump, human scientist. He was part of the Ursan collective, experiencing existence as they did. Through their shared consciousness, he felt the weight of their ancient wisdom. He experienced their deep connection to their world and to each other. He understood that they had chosen to live in harmony with nature not because they lacked intelligence, but because their intelligence had evolved beyond the need to dominate their environment. And they, in turn, experienced his humanity. They felt his species' drive to explore and understand. They saw the potential for growth and cooperation that existed within human nature, even alongside its flaws. Dr. Vasquez and her team watched in amazement as human and alien consciousness merged in ways that had never been documented before. The readings from their instruments went beyond anything they had ever recorded. This level of telepathic integration should be impossible, Dr. Vasquez whispered. The mental structures are completely different. Maybe that's the point, Jake said quietly. Maybe true intelligence isn't about being the same. Maybe it's about being able to connect despite being different. The telepathic connection lasted only minutes, but it felt like hours. When it finally ended, both Barron and Grothak collapsed from exhaustion. But the change in the meadow was immediate and obvious. Every person present had experienced something that transformed their understanding of consciousness itself. They had felt what it was like to be part of a truly unified species. They had experienced intelligence that was both alien and familiar, different from human consciousness but undeniably real. Dr. Vasquez approached Barron as he struggled to his feet. Her expression had changed completely. "I've never experienced anything like that," she said softly. "The level of mental sophistication, the complexity of their social connections. This is intelligence on a scale we've never encountered before." "Does that mean?" "It means the Ursans are not just intelligent. They may be the most advanced form of consciousness in the galaxy. Any attempt to mine this planet would be not just genocide, but the destruction of something irreplaceable. As word of the Federation's decision spread, the mining consortium's ships turned